All right, so get this. Today, we are doing a deep dive on something a little different.
Oh,
Yeah. Selling spices in the UK.
interesting.
Yeah, so, you might be thinking, wait, I'm not opening a spice shop, but
Right.
it's not really about that. It's more about understanding the systems behind everyday things
Well, I see.
and how these small things can have a big impact. We've got this really cool guide on the legalities of selling spices, and
Oh.
it's more interesting than it sounds, trust me.
I'm sure it is. What I find really interesting is that selling spices in the UK isn't really about specific permits.
Yeah.
It's more like a web of rules that protect both consumers and businesses.
Oh, totally. And the first thing that surprised me was that you don't need a special license to sell spices.
Right.
I just assumed you'd need a license for, well, everything.
Yeah, that's a pretty common misconception.
Yeah.
But just because there isn't a specific spice license doesn't mean it's a free-for-all.
Right.
There's a whole system in place to make sure things are safe and transparent.
Okay, so let's say I want to, I don't know, package up my grandma's secret spice blend and start selling it.
Okay.
Where do I even begin?
Well, first things first, you have to register your food business with your local council.
Okay.
And you have to do this at least 28 days before you sell any food.
28 days? Wow, that's almost a whole month.
Yeah,
Guess there's no room for, like, sudden entrepreneurial inspiration then.
not really.
Hmm.
This waiting period is important because it allows authorities, people like environmental health officers,
Why?
to schedule inspections and make sure you're meeting all the food safety standards.
Gotcha.
And this applies even if you're just selling it like a farmer's market.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about, I have a question about this.
Yeah.
What about hygiene certifications? Like, even if I'm just dealing with dried spices,
Okay.
do I really need to worry about that? I mean, they seem pretty shelf stable.
You'd be surprised. Even dried spices have requirements for hygiene
Yeah.
because, you're handling food that people are going to eat. And there's always a chance of contamination.
True.
The guide actually recommends getting a level 2 food hygiene and safety for catering course, which is
Wow.
surprisingly affordable
Oh, cool.
and gives you everything you need to know.
Okay, so food hygiene, check. Now let's get into labeling.
Sure.
This is something I've always wondered about. Like, you see those long lists of ingredients on spice jars?
Right.
Is there, like, a method to that madness?
Absolutely. The UK has really strict labeling requirements,
Okay.
and spices are no exception. You have to include the product name,
Mm-hmm.
the whole ingredients list with allergens highlighted,
Okay.
net quantity,
Yeah.
storage instructions, expiry dates, your business contact info,
Okay.
and even a batch code.
Wow. That's a lot to fit on a tiny label.
It is.
No wonder it's hard to figure out those spice blend ingredient lists.
Right.
But I guess it all comes down to protecting the consumer, right?
Exactly. Each element on the label serves a specific purpose. Like, the ingredients list and the allergen info are crucial to prevent allergic reactions.
Makes sense.
Clear net quantity, storage instructions, and expiry dates ensure that people know exactly what they're getting and how to store it.
Yeah.
And then the business contact and batch code.
Yeah.
Those are essential for traceability in case of recalls or other issues.
Speaking of traceability, I was reading about Natasha's Law.
Uh-huh.
What's the story behind that?
So Natasha's Law, that was introduced in 2021
Okay.
after a really tragic incident where a teenager died
Yeah.
because of an allergic reaction to a prepackaged sandwich
Oh, wow.
that didn't have a full ingredients list.
Oh, no.
So this law makes it mandatory to have clear allergen labeling,
Okay.
even for prepackaged food that's sold directly, like at a market stall.
Wow, that's heartbreaking, and it really shows how important those labels are.
Right.
It's not just paperwork, it's literally about people's lives.
Exactly. Even something as seemingly simple as labeling spices can have major consequences.
Right.
Natasha's Law is a powerful reminder that every detail matters when it comes to food safety.
Okay, so labeling's a big deal.
Yeah.
But let's move from labels to something a little more hands-on,
Right.
cross-contamination. Like, what about if I accidentally get a pinch of, like, super hot chili powder in my mild turmeric? Yikes.
Yeah, that's a great point. Cross-contamination is a serious issue,
Yeah,
especially with allergens.
right.
That's why the guide stresses having dedicated equipment, thorough cleaning, and clear labeling,
Okay.
even if it's just a trace amount of another spice that's gotten in.
So you're saying even a tiny speck of the wrong spice can cause problems?
It can, yeah.
Especially for people with allergies.
Especially, yeah.
Okay, that's something I hadn't really thought about before.
It's easy to overlook,
Yeah,
but it's better to be safe than sorry.
for sure. Okay, so we've talked about hygiene, labeling, and cross-contamination. What about the business side of things? Is it just mixing spices and putting them in jars?
Oh, no. You also have to think about uh, things like taxes and business structure
Oh, of
and
course.
all that fun stuff.
Mm.
In the UK, you'd need to notify HMRC,
HMRC.
which is kind of like the IRS in the US,
Got it.
about your spice selling activities.
Okay, and what does that usually involve? Notifying HMRC.
Well, usually it means registering as self-employed
Mm-hmm.
or setting up a limited company, depending on, how you want to structure your business.
Right.
And then there's, of course, the tax part.
Ah,
If
yes.
your annual turnover from those spice blends
Right.
exceeds a certain amount, you'd need to register for VAT,
VAT. Okay.
which is basically a value-added tax.
Right. Taxes. Can't live with them. Can't live without them.
Right.
But I'm guessing good record keeping is key for any small business, not just spices.
Absolutely. Keeping track of income, expenses, and inventory
Mm-hmm.
is crucial no matter what you're selling.
Okay, so we've got HMRC, VAT, and spreadsheets on our to-do list.
Right. What else should aspiring spice entrepreneurs keep in mind?
Well, another thing to consider is where you'll be operating from.
Okay.
Are you thinking of setting up at home?
Yeah.
Or are you picturing a dedicated commercial facility?
So let's say I'm thinking, hey, I could just start this in my kitchen.
Okay.
What do I need to know?
Even if you're running your spice business from your home kitchen,
Right.
you still need to meet the same food hygiene standards as any other food business.
Okay.
So think clean work surfaces, separate equipment just for your business,
Right.
and proper storage to prevent contamination.
Got it.
And remember, inspections can happen anywhere,
Oh, okay.
including your home.
So that adds a whole other level of intensity to my late night baking sessions.
Yeah,
But it makes sense. The rules are there to protect everyone.
exactly. Whether you're working from home or a fancy facility,
Right.
those regulations make sure there's a basic level of safety and quality for consumers.
All right. This is getting really interesting.
So we've got the location sorted. What about protecting ourselves? Like, is insurance something we need to be thinking about at this stage?
Absolutely. Public liability and product liability insurance are essential,
Okay.
even if you're just starting out small.
Got it.
Public liability, that protects you if a customer claims they got injured or sick because of your spices.
Okay.
And product liability covers you if there's a claim about, the safety or quality of your product.
Okay, so insurance isn't the most exciting topic, but
Right.
I have to admit I'd feel a lot more secure knowing I'm covered if something goes wrong,
It is definitely important.
especially with food.
Right.
Yeah.
It's peace of mind, really.
Right.
You're protecting yourself and your business from potential risks,
Yeah.
which could be anything from a customer having an allergic reaction
Mm-hmm.
to, someone spilling a jar of Putin chili powder and getting burned.
Oh, which I could see how that would be a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so insurance, not glamorous,
Yeah.
but a must-have for any spice business. What's next on our checklist?
Let's talk packaging.
Packaging.
It's not just about looking good on the shelf. It's also about food safety and sustainability.
Right, packaging. I hadn't really thought about that much, but it makes sense. What are the main things to keep in mind when choosing packaging for spices?
Well, the first thing is to use food-grade materials,
Oh.
which means they're safe to be in contact with food.
Right.
So think like sealed jars,
Mm-hmm.
pouches,
Okay.
or plastic containers that are specifically labeled for food.
Got it.
But then beyond safety,
Yeah.
there's also the sustainability aspect.
Right.
Consumers are getting more and more eco-conscious these days.
Totally.
So having eco-friendly options is a big plus.
That's true. I'm much more likely to buy something if it comes in packaging that's, good for the planet.
Yeah.
What are some examples of eco-friendly packaging for spices?
Oh, there's some really cool options out there, like compostable pouches made from plant-based materials,
Okay.
recyclable jars,
Mm.
and even refillable options.
Cool.
Those are all becoming more popular.
Oh.
It's a win-win because you're reducing your environmental impact
Yeah.
and you're appealing to consumers who care about sustainability.
It's amazing how even the spice aisle is reflecting the shift towards sustainability.
It is.
So we've talked about packaging in general, but are there different things to consider depending on where you're selling your spices? Like, is it different for online versus at a physical market?
You're right. The playing field does change depending on where you're selling.
Okay.
When you're selling online, you need to comply with general UK consumer laws.
Mm-hmm.
So that's things like accurate product descriptions,
Oh.
clear pricing,
Right.
transparent refund policies,
Gotcha.
and of course those labeling requirements.
Always the label.
Always.
Right.
But then there are also the specific rules of each online platform.
Okay.
So whether it's Etsy or eBay, your own website or wherever.
So UK law and then platform-specific rules. That sounds like a lot.
It can be. But a lot of these rules overlap.
Okay.
And they're all ultimately aiming to protect both buyers and sellers.
That makes sense.
And these principles apply really broadly.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if you're selling spices or, vintage clothing.
Got it. Always double check the rules.
Yes.
What about selling at a physical market?
So markets, they often have their own set of regulations
Okay.
on top of general UK law.
Gotcha.
So you might need to show proof of your food business registration,
Right.
liability insurance,
Mm-hmm.
and, of course, compliance with labeling laws.
Of course.
Some markets even have rules about how you set up your stall,
Oh,
waste disposal,
okay.
and even the types of products you can sell.
So research is key.
It is.
You got to know the rules of the market
Yeah.
before you even go there. It's a lot to keep track of.
It is, but it's all about being prepared
Right.
and doing your research.
Yep. Okay, so we've covered online versus market selling, but what if we're not just sourcing spices locally? What if we're importing them from, say, Indonesia or Morocco?
Okay.
Does that make things even more complicated?
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
Importing spices adds a whole other layer of complexity.
Okay.
You need to comply with both UK and EU food safety standards.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to navigate import tariffs and duties,
Right.
and there's a lot more paperwork.
Fine.
You'll need certificates of origin,
Okay.
documents proving compliance with UK pesticide residue levels,
Right.
and potentially, depending on the spice,
Okay.
even specific import licenses.
Wow. It sounds like importing spices is a whole other world.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Makes you appreciate the journey those spices take to get to our kitchens.
It does.
It's not as simple as I thought.
No, it's not.
Right. It really highlights how global the food system is
It does.
and all the interconnectedness
Yeah.
of regulations and production and consumer demand.
Absolutely.
Wow, it's fascinating.
It is.
When you think about it, it's like a whole hidden world behind that jar of cumin.
Wow. It is. Yeah.
But speaking of the bigger picture, we can't forget about the environmental impact of all this.
Of course not.
From transportation emissions to packaging waste, it seems like the spice trade leaves a footprint.
It does. Responsible waste management is crucial,
Okay.
especially for food businesses.
Yeah.
So this means properly disposing of food waste,
Mm-hmm.
using recycling schemes for packaging,
Right.
and maybe even working with specialized waste contractors
Okay.
if you're generating a lot of waste.
So even though we're talking about relatively small quantities of spices,
Yeah,
it's still important to be mindful of waste.
absolutely.
All adds up, right?
It does, yeah. It's all connected.
Yeah.
How we source spices, how we transport them, how we package them,
Yeah,
and how we dispose of them. It's a whole cycle,
it is.
and every stage has an impact.
Okay, we've covered so much ground.
We have.
We've talked about food hygiene, labeling, business structure,
Mm-hmm.
tax, insurance, packaging, online versus market selling,
Right.
even importing spices.
Yeah.
What else should we cover?
Oh, there's one more thing I think is worth mentioning.
Okay.
So you don't need a specific license to sell spices in the UK,
Right.
but there are some optional certifications you might want to consider,
Okay.
especially if you're trying to target specific groups of customers.
Oh, certifications? Like what?
Like, for example, if you're planning on selling organic spices,
Right.
you'll need to get certified by an approved body, like the Soil Association.
Soil Association. Okay.
It's a way to show customers that your spices meet strict organic standards.
It's like a badge of honor showing you're committed to organic practices.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I imagine customers who want organic food are more likely to buy from a certified seller, right?
Absolutely. It builds trust and transparency.
Yeah.
Which is super important in the food industry.
It is.
It can take a bit of work to get certified,
Okay.
but it's worth it if you're going after that market.
So it's all about knowing your target audience and what they care about.
Yeah.
And it's cool that there are options beyond just the basic regulations. It's about going above and beyond.
It is.
Okay. I'm already feeling much more knowledgeable about this whole world of selling spices in the UK.
Good.
It's definitely more than meets the eye.
It is.
But there's one more thing I'm curious about.
Yeah.
What about advertising?
Okay.
Are there, like, rules about what we can and can't say about our spices? especially when it comes to health benefits?
That's a great question. You can't just make, like, wild claims about health benefits
Right.
without any scientific backing.
Right.
The Food Standards Agency, or FSA, they're pretty strict about that.
The FSA, right.
Right.
They seem to be involved in pretty much every aspect of food regulation in the UK.
They are.
So what are the guidelines when it comes to advertising spices?
You need to be honest and transparent
Okay.
and avoid making any misleading health claims,
Right.
unless they're backed by, credible scientific evidence
Yeah.
and approved by the FSA.
So we can talk about how delicious our spices are
Yes.
and how they enhance the flavor of dishes.
Yeah.
But we can't promise miracles.
Exactly. You have to stay within the boundaries of what's scientifically proven
Right.
and what's allowed by the FSA.
Okay.
And of course, clear allergen warnings are essential
Mm-hmm.
in all your marketing,
Okay.
just like on your product labels.
Allergen information is key.
Yes.
We need to be consistent with that across all our communication, our website,
Yes.
social media.
It all needs to be there.
Okay.
It's about putting consumer safety first
Right.
and being transparent in everything you do.
Wow. This deep dive has been so eye-opening.
Good.
I feel like I've learned so much about the ins and outs of selling spices in the UK.
I'm glad.
It's definitely more than meets the eye.
It really is.
Yeah. And even if we're not planning on selling spices ourselves,
Right.
this knowledge gives us a whole new appreciation for what goes on behind the scenes.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
It gives you a glimpse into these intricate systems
Right.
that are in place to ensure that the food we buy is safe,
Right.
accurately labeled,
Yeah.
and meets certain quality standards.
I know. I'll never look at a jar of spices the same way again.
I don't think anyone can after this deep dive.
Yeah, seriously. But before we move on to the next part of our deep dive, I'd love to hear your thoughts on something.
Okay.
Given all these regulations,
Mm-hmm.
what does the presence of such diverse, high-quality spices in the UK say about global trade
That's a great question.
and the interconnectedness of our food systems?
It really speaks volumes about the intricate web of relationships,
Yeah.
regulations, and logistics
Right.
that allow us to enjoy flavors from all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's a reminder that even something as small as a jar of spices connects us to a much larger world.
It really is. It's like a global adventure in every spice jar.
Yeah.
And on that note, let's take a quick break.
Okay.
And when we come back, we'll dive deeper into the sustainability side of things
Sounds good.
and explore some of the exciting trends that are shaping the future of the spice industry.
Looking forward to it.
All right. See you in a bit.
See you then. It's really amazing to think that we can just walk into a supermarket
Yeah.
or browse online
Hmm?
and find spices from literally all over the world.
I know, right? It's something I never really thought about before, but it's kind of mind-blowing when you really think about it.
It is.
That tiny jar of cumin in my cupboard could have come from, like, halfway across the planet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And behind that jar of cumin is a whole network
Yeah.
of trade routes and regulations and quality control measures.
Yeah, we talked about some of those regulations earlier.
We did.
And honestly, they seemed a bit overwhelming at first,
I can understand that.
but I'm starting to see why they're so important.
They are. They're there to protect consumers
Mm-hmm.
and make sure that the spices we're using are safe and authentic
Yeah.
and of high quality.
Yeah, it's easy to take those things for granted. But when you think about the potential risks, like foodborne illnesses, allergic reactions,
Uh-huh.
those regulations make a lot of sense.
They do. They provide a framework for responsible and ethical practices
Right.
within the spice trade.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that even something as small as a pinch of spice
Mm-hmm.
can have a ripple effect across the world.
It can.
And you know what else?
What's that?
We can't forget about the cultural significance of spices.
Oh, absolutely.
They've played such a vital role in shaping cuisines
They have.
and traditions.
In centuries.
Yeah, spices aren't just about adding flavor. They're
Right.
about connecting us to different cultures
Yeah.
and culinary heritages.
I completely agree. Think about like the warm aromatic spices used in Indian curries
Mm-hmm.
or the smoky paprika
Mm,
that's essential to Spanish cuisine.
right.
Each region has its own unique spice profile.
Yeah, it's like a culinary passport.
It is.
You can travel the world through spices
You-
without ever leaving your kitchen. And as we've become more globalized,
right.
it's more important than ever to support ethical sourcing practices,
Absolutely.
sustainable packaging,
Yes.
and fair trade principles within the spice industry.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm definitely more aware of those issues now than I was before.
That's good.
It's not just about getting the best tasting spices anymore. It's
Yeah.
also about making sure that they're produced in a way that's good for people and the planet.
Well said.
So let's shift gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about the Food Standards Agency.
Okay.
Here in the UK,
All right.
the FSA,
Yeah.
they play a huge role in ensuring food safety
They do.
and consumer protection.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, the FSA. We mentioned them earlier, right?
We did.
They're the ones who set the standards for all those regulations that we were
Yes.
talking about.
Yeah.
They provide guidance to businesses,
Uh-huh.
conduct inspections,
Yeah.
and investigate any food-related issues that come up.
They do. It's a big job.
Yeah, so they're like the guardians of our food system, making sure everyone's playing by the rules.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. And their role is especially important when it comes to spices,
Yes.
which are often imported from countries
Right.
with varying safety standards.
Exactly.
So what are some of the specific things that the FSA does to regulate spices?
Well, in addition to those general food safety regulations,
Yeah.
that apply to all food businesses.
Right.
The FSA has specific guidelines
Okay.
for labeling and composition.
Labeling again. It seems like that's a recurring theme.
It is crucial.
Yeah.
The FSA mandates that spice labels have to include all sorts of information,
Okay.
from the product name and the ingredients list
Right.
to allergen information and storage instructions.
We talked about that earlier, and I have to admit, some of those ingredient lists can be pretty intimidating.
They can be, yeah.
But I'm starting to see why they're so detailed.
It's all about transparency
Okay.
and giving consumers the information they need
Yeah.
to make informed choices.
And what about allergen information?
Yes.
We touched on that briefly before,
We did.
but it seems like a really big deal.
It is. The FSA is super strict about allergen labeling.
Okay.
Allergens have to be clearly highlighted on the label
Right.
so consumers can easily identify them.
That's especially important for people with severe allergies.
Absolutely.
A tiny amount of the wrong spice could be life-threatening.
It could, yeah.
And the FSA has the power to penalize businesses
They do.
that don't comply with these regulations.
That's right.
So it's not just about following the rules to avoid getting in trouble.
Right.
It's about protecting people's health.
Exactly.
Now, another thing the FSA focuses on is the quality of spices.
Yes,
They have standards in place to prevent adulteration,
that's right.
which is basically adding cheaper or inferior ingredients to bulk up a spice.
Exactly.
Adulteration, that sounds sneaky. How do they even catch that?
Well, they have sophisticated testing methods that can identify the presence of foreign substances.
Wow.
They also conduct regular inspections of food businesses
Right.
to ensure that they're using high-quality ingredients
Okay.
and following proper procedures.
So they're actively monitoring the spice supply chain.
They are.
It's good to know.
It helps to maintain consumer trust
Yeah.
and ensure that we're all getting what we pay for.
It's like choosing a trustworthy friend.
It is.
You want someone you can rely on
Yeah.
to provide you with honest, high-quality products.
Exactly. And when it comes to something we're putting into our bodies,
Yeah.
that trust is essential.
Okay, so we've learned a lot about the FSA's role
Mhm.
in regulating spices.
We have.
It sounds like they have their hands full.
They do.
But what about the bigger picture?
Okay.
What are some of the sustainability challenges
Right.
facing the spice industry as a whole?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's a topic that's getting more and more attention these days. One major concern is the environmental impact of spice production,
Okay.
particularly when it comes to things like deforestation,
Okay.
water usage,
Mm-hmm.
and pesticide use.
Deforestation. Really? I never thought about the environmental impact of something as small as spices.
And I know it might seem surprising,
It does.
but a lot of spices are grown in tropical regions
Right.
where deforestation is a major problem.
Okay.
Land is often cleared to make way for spice plantations,
Right.
which can have devastating consequences for biodiversity
Yeah.
and ecosystems.
And what about water usage and pesticides?
Yeah.
Are those causing problems too?
Yes, unfortunately.
Okay.
Some spice crops require a lot of water to grow,
Hmm.
which can put a strain on local water resources.
Right?
And then the use of pesticides can harm wildlife,
Yeah.
pollute water sources,
Okay.
and degrade soil health.
So it sounds like the demand for spices is having some unintended consequences.
It's a complex issue,
Yeah.
but the good news is that there are growing efforts to promote sustainable spice production practices.
That's encouraging. What are some of the things being done to address these problems?
Well, for example, some organizations are working with farmers
Okay.
to implement agroforestry techniques,
Right.
which involve growing spices alongside other trees and crops.
Right.
This creates a more diverse and resilient ecosystem,
Okay.
and it reduces the reliance on monoculture farming.
That sounds like a win-win.
It is.
It's good for the environment,
Yeah,
and it can potentially benefit the farmers as well.
exactly. And another important aspect of sustainability is fair labor practices.
Right.
The spice industry, unfortunately, has a history of exploitation,
Yeah.
with farmers and workers often receiving low wages
Right.
and working in poor conditions.
That's terrible.
It is.
It's easy to forget that there are real people behind those jars of spices.
It is easy to forget that we need to make sure that the people who are growing and harvesting our spices
Yeah.
are being treated fairly and ethically.
So, what can we do as consumers
Okay.
to support fair labor practices?
One thing you can do is look for spices that are certified fair trade.
Fair trade, right.
Fair trade certification ensures that farmers receive a fair price for their products
Okay.
and that workers have safe and decent working conditions.
So it's like voting with your wallet.
It is.
By choosing fair trade spices.
Yes,
We're supporting businesses that are doing things the right way.
exactly. And it's not just about fair trade.
Right.
It's also about supporting businesses that are transparent
Okay.
about their sourcing practices and committed to sustainability.
It's all about making conscious choices and being informed consumers.
Well said.
Speaking of conscious choices, let's talk about packaging,
Great.
which is another important aspect of sustainability.
It is.
Packaging, I guess I never really thought about it before.
Yeah.
But it makes sense.
Yeah.
All those jars and pouches must generate a lot of waste.
They do.
Yeah.
Traditionally, spices have been packaged in single-use plastic or paper,
Right.
which contributes to landfill waste and pollution.
So what are some of the alternatives?
Okay.
Are there more sustainable options available?
There are.
Yeah.
Some companies are using compostable or biodegradable packaging materials,
Okay.
like plant-based plastics
Right.
or even mushroom-based packaging.
Mushroom-based packaging. That's fascinating. I've never heard of that before.
It's pretty cool. It's made from the root structure of mushrooms,
Wow.
and it's completely biodegradable.
That's amazing.
And other companies are exploring reusable or refillable packaging options,
Okay.
which encourage consumers to reduce their waste.
Refillable spice jars. I love that idea.
It's a good one.
It's like bringing back the old-fashioned bulk bins, but in a more modern way.
Exactly. And it's not just about the materials themselves. It's
Yeah.
also about reducing the amount of packaging used overall.
Okay.
So some companies are opting for minimalist packaging designs or using concentrated spice blends
Right.
that require less packaging per serving.
Less packaging means less waste,
Exactly.
which is good for everyone.
It is.
And it can even save businesses money on packaging costs.
It can.
So it's a win-win.
It is.
It sounds like there's a lot of innovation happening in the packaging world.
There is.
Yeah.
And it's being driven by consumer demand. People are more aware of the environmental impact of packaging than ever before.
Yeah, it's great to see that businesses are responding to those concerns
It
and
is.
coming up with creative solutions.
Absolutely. So to sum up this part of our discussion,
Okay.
it seems like the spice industry is facing some big sustainability challenges,
Yeah,
but there are also some really promising solutions emerging.
right.
It's all about working together to create a more ethical and sustainable spice trade that benefits everyone.
I agree. It's about making conscious choices as consumers,
Yes.
supporting responsible businesses, and advocating for positive change.
Well said. Now ready to explore some of the exciting trends and innovations
Yes,
that are shaping the future of the spice world.
definitely. After all that talk about sustainability,
Yeah.
I'm eager to hear about some of the positive developments happening in the spice industry.
All right, let's jump right in.
Okay, so we've covered the regulations, the sustainability issues, and the ethical stuff around spices. But now I'm ready for the fun part. What exciting trends are shaping the future of the spice world?
Well, one trend that's really taking off is single-origin spices.
Single origin spices. What's that all about?
It's kind of like the craft beer movement, but for spices.
Okay, I get it. Like single origin coffee.
Exactly. Just like with coffee or chocolate, single-origin spices are sourced from a specific place, a specific region,
Okay.
and that gives them, unique flavors.
So it's not just what kind of spice it is, but where it comes from that affects the taste.
Yeah, think of it like terroir for wine.
Oh, okay. I see.
The environment where a spice is grown impacts its flavor.
That makes sense.
People are getting more curious about where their food comes from,
Right.
and they're willing to pay more for spices that have a story behind them.
So it's about the experience, the connection to a specific place.
It is. People want authenticity, transparency in their food choices.
Yeah.
And single-origin spices offer that. They let consumers connect with the farmers,
Mm-hmm.
the land where those spices are grown,
That's cool.
and appreciate how the unique terroir influences the flavor.
It's like a culinary adventure in a jar.
What are some examples of these single-origin spices that are becoming popular?
Well, one example is Tellicherry black pepper from India. It's known for its bold, complex flavor, and it has these citrusy notes.
Ooh, interesting.
Then there's Vietnamese cinnamon.
I love cinnamon.
It has a sweeter, more delicate aroma compared to the cassia cinnamon you usually find
Oh, okay.
in supermarkets.
I'm going to have to try the Vietnamese kind. What else is out there?
Oh, so many. Smoked paprika from Spain is another one that's popular. It gets its smoky flavor from being traditionally dried over oak wood fires. Wow, really?
Which gives it this, unique depth.
Okay, those all sound amazing. I'm already getting hungry just thinking about all the dishes I could make with these unique spices. It's like a whole new world of flavor.
It is. And the best part is, as demand grows for these single-origin spices,
Yeah,
it encourages farmers to really focus on quality and sustainability,
that's great.
which is good for everyone.
All right, so single origin spices are definitely on my radar now. What other trends are shaking things up in the spice industry?
Another one that's really interesting is how technology is being used to enhance the spice experience.
Technology and spices. That's an interesting combination.
I know, right? Might seem a bit unexpected.
Yeah.
But technology is playing a bigger and bigger role in the spice world these days.
Like what?
Well, we're seeing smart spice grinders now
Smart spice grinders.
that can adjust the grind size based on the type of spice.
Wow.
So you get the perfect texture for your dish.
That's pretty clever.
Yeah,
I always struggle with getting the grind right.
exactly. These smart grinders take out the guesswork.
Nice.
And then there are even apps
Okay.
that provide personalized spice recommendations based on your taste.
Wait, personalized spice recommendations?
Yeah, you can input like your favorite cuisines, flavor profiles,
Okay.
even dietary restrictions.
Wow.
And the app will suggest spice combinations that you're likely to enjoy.
That's amazing. It's like having a personal spice guru in your pocket.
Exactly. Technology is making it so much easier to explore the world of spices
That is.
and create dishes that are customized to your own taste.
That's so cool. It's amazing how technology is transforming even the most traditional culinary practices.
It is.
So we've got single origin spices, tech-enabled spice experiences.
Hmm.
What else? Any predictions for the future of spices?
Well, one thing that's really exciting is this growing interest in the functional properties of spices.
Oh, right. We talked about that a bit earlier. Spices aren't just about flavor. They can actually be good for us.
Exactly. And as research continues, I think we're going to see a lot more focus on spices as functional ingredients.
Okay.
People are becoming much more interested in using food as medicine,
Yeah, that's true.
and spices are a natural fit for that trend.
So you're saying we might see spices marketed not just for their taste, but also for their health benefits?
I think it's definitely possible. We're already seeing some of that happening with turmeric, ginger, and cinnamon,
Right.
which are known for their anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties.
Okay, that makes sense. It's all about the connection between flavor, health, and well-being.
It is.
I'm really fascinated by this whole idea of spices as functional ingredients.
Yeah, it's exciting.
It's like a whole new way of thinking about cooking.
It is. And it's not just about the science. It's about rediscovering traditional culinary wisdom
Right.
and, the role that spices have played in promoting health for centuries.
Combining the best of both worlds, modern science and ancient traditions. It's exciting to think about all the possibilities.
It is. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the key takeaway is that the spice industry is always evolving,
It is.
driven by consumer demand for quality, sustainability, and innovation.
This has been an incredible journey. We went from the nitty-gritty details of spice regulations
Right?
to the global implications of ethical sourcing, and now to the cutting edge of flavor and innovation.
It's been quite the exploration.
It has, and through it all, we've seen how spices connect us to different cultures,
Yes.
inspire culinary creativity,
Absolutely.
and even play a role in our health and well-being.
They do.
I know I'll never look at a jar of spices the same way again.
You either?
It's amazing to think about the history, the science, the artistry that goes into bringing those flavors to our kitchens.
It is amazing.
Well, on that note, we'll leave you to savor the flavors and explore the endless possibilities of the spice world.
Enjoy.
Until next time, happy cooking. And may your kitchens be filled with the aromas of adventure.
Cheers to that.